So to honor my older videos where I would always hold something in my hands while filming, today we are filming a stereo streaming amplifier that I can actually hold in my hand for the entirety of this video. This is the Arylic A50 Plus. This is a streaming stereo amplifier, and as you'll see, it can act as a standard stereo speaker amplifier, but it has streaming services as well. So how can something so tiny actually power up a pair of passive speakers? Well, starting with the internal design, we have Class D amplifiers inside, and this unit can provide up to 50 watts per channel for a 4 ohm impedance and up to 30 watts per channel for an 8 ohm impedance. While this doesn't sound like much, it actually is not much. So with a power like this, you have to make sure that the recommended power requirements of your speakers are matched. Some speakers don't like a lot of power being provided to them, while other speakers will burn if you don't power them enough. With speakers, typically you just have to go with what the producer recommends to get the best experience. The A50 Plus comes with a rich selection of accessories, so the package alone would justify its asking price of $179. So this is affordable to say the least, especially for stereo setups. $179 is really affordable. But with the wide selection of inputs and with the stereo output we have, you'll see that things just keep getting better with it. So in the package we have the line-in options. We have an RCA to RCA line cable, which is of a okay quality, so you may want to upgrade the cable, but for a unit that costs $179, you really can do with the original, so it's absolutely doable. We also have a 3.5mm to RCA cable, which also of a okay quality, it's good enough for this price point. We have a remote, and this is one of the best parts for a unit so affordable. So this is the remote, fully functional, looks pretty cool. The backside will scratch quite easily because it is made of a glossy plastic, but the top doesn't really scratch easily. The text on the buttons doesn't get erased easily. The remote takes standard AAA batteries, that's AAA. They are also called LR03, so smaller batteries. So one of the best parts for Arylic A50 Plus compared to most other entry-level affordable Class D stereo amplifiers is the power brick. And one of the important aspects to it is that it's silent. Some other entry-level amplifiers do come with a power brick which has a noise, which sounds like a waterfall going shh, and you hear that continuously together with your music. But the sound isn't inside the speakers, it's not projected into the amplifier, it's the sound of the power brick. So Arylic A50 Plus doesn't have that, and you can enjoy a pretty noise-free experience from it, especially from the power brick so far. We also have a pretty good speaker driving ability. The inputs include RCA line input, which works as intended. It's a RCA line input. If your DAC has some noise, that will be amplified as well. But if your DAC is modestly quiet, then the sound will be quite good. We have a micro USB input. We have a mode button at the back. We have two antennas, one for Wi-Fi and one for Bluetooth, because the Arylic A50 Plus can be both a streamer via Wi-Fi, but it also takes in Bluetooth signals, which once again blows my mind how many features it can have for such a meager price. So you can basically have it connected to all of your devices, including Tidal, Roon, and the 4Stream app is used even by some of the most expensive streamers out there. So it's not bad, but it's gotten much better than when I wrote the full written review, because back then I didn't really like the streaming app, it was a bit cumbersome. Nowadays it works pretty well, pretty solid. I mean, I would just rely on Tidal Connect and such, as Tidal's is a bit more intuitive for me. Since I wrote the original review, the unit got so popular that basically most electronics stores in Romania carry it in their offers. So I'm pretty shocked about that, because when I reviewed it, it wasn't even known by most people, but now it's one of the most purchased, most popular mini stereo amplifiers in Romania. So Arylic now has options with high-end Bluetooth, so with aptX HD, but the A50 Plus doesn't have aptX HD. If you need that, you have to get one of their B50 or H50 streaming amplifiers. Those do come with aptX HD. With A50 we just get SBC and AAC, but we do get the USB DAC function, which quite surprisingly actually works and it sounds quite great, but with a little caveat. We have to use the micro USB connector on the back. And I can't emphasize enough how rare a micro USB cable is these days. We are in 2024 and the cables have been phased out of usage for almost 5 to 10 years now. So I was seeing Type-C cables back in 5 years ago in 2019. And right now it's quite unusual to have one of those micro USB cables on hand. But quite surprisingly, I do have one, because working as a reviewer, we get some of those more ancient connectors. Even more surprising is the fact that I have a mini USB connector. I don't even think most people remember this one, but this bad boy was something in 2014. I actually need this to charge a remote for the AC design stereo amplifier, but it's just for the remote, so it doesn't use this for connection. While with the A50 Plus, we do use a micro USB cable, since there is none of those cables included in the package. But happily, if you do have the power brick, it takes in kettle plugs, so you can use a standard cable like this one. This is the default cable. The power brick has a long enough cable. The cable that it comes with is also decently long, not the longest, but decent enough. And we even have an active subwoofer output. I'm saying active because your subwoofer has to be self-powered. A50 Plus doesn't have a passive subwoofer output, so you won't be able to power it if it doesn't take in the single RCA input that the output A50 Plus has, but it's pretty useful. We have optical input, we have USB input, it can read USB sticks, we have Ethernet input, you can connect this to the Ethernet, and you can stream basically with all of the big streaming services, including Tidal, Qobuz, Spotify. I did test the streaming and it's okay, it works pretty well. I experienced zero interruptions, zero issues. It's one of the most solid streamers that I know of if you just need a streaming stereo amplifier. Onto the sound, we have to get by the connector. So as you'll see at the back, there is no standard speaker connector. We just have the back, and then you'll have to use this thing to connect speakers to it. As you can see, this is a specialized connector. I've seen this on a few other mini-sized amplifiers, and I do have a little problem with it. So while it isn't necessarily bad by design, there is one little issue. So you have this connector, which is small. You can see it compared to my hand. It's about 4 times the size of my ring. It's quite small. 4 screws barely have enough space on it, so it's not big. The problem here is that you have naked wire coming out of it, and you have to cut your wires quite precisely as long as you need them. Otherwise, you risk the wires touching each other, the connector shorting out, and the A50 Plus burning. So that is a bit of a problem to take into account. Or at least if it won't burn, because I expect the power delivery to not be high enough for it to purely short circuit and to burn, but the sound won't be great. And this is a bit fiddly to install, but it is doable. Now, the problem is that you can use very thin speaker cables. So only entry-level stuff, no high-end cables, and at $179 I don't expect you to try to use high-end cables with it. But you need just pretty thin cables. As you can see, those are quite thin. This is the maximum that can go inside of the connector. So this is like the only part that I even had something against the amplifier when I wrote the written review about it. You can get by, but it's not the most convenient solution. The speaker connector then clicks into place. It just does this, and then it is ready to use. Since you will not be using very thick speaker cables, it won't slide on your desk, it is pretty stable, it also has rubber feet on the bottom, and it looks pretty cute. I mean, just look at it. As this is a multi-room solution, you can have multiple of those connected to different systems. They can even play at the same time, which is quite cool, but I don't really know why would you do that, unless it's for a home theater or for a store. So it can be used more than just in the consumer environment, it can be used in the professional environment if you need an amplifying and streaming solution for that. Let's say you have a clothing shop and you need to connect a bigger stereo system up above to give music to your customers. Something like the A50 Plus would be quite great for that. Even if you are someone who has a home theater and you have a separate subwoofer that is rather far away from your main system, you can use something like the A50 Plus to connect it to your system, or to use multiple of those to connect multiple zones of speakers. That is possible too. The downside is that the driving power is not quite that high, so at 50 watts per channel at 4 ohms, it isn't the most beefy amplifier out there. With that being said, it can power most speakers that I have around the house. It can drive KLH Model 5 just fine, it can drive the Pylon Audio Diamond 30 MK2, it can drive the Bouchard S400, basically even an HTC3. Most speakers will move and they will sound quite good out of it. The downside is that you can't bring it very loud, so to hold a party it will start sounding a bit compressed and a bit distorted, because that's a limitation of the Class D amplifier inside. Not all Class D amplifiers have this limitation, but the solution used in the Arylic A50 Plus is a bit limited in that aspect. That being said, the sound is very natural, enjoyable, and you even have equalizer options on it. So it's a really practical, really convenient solution to listen to speakers, but the sound isn't audiophile great. It's better than most other mini amplifiers in many aspects. It has more connections, better features, the sound is a bit more pleasing, so it's a very convenient solution to use and to listen to. The sound can be described as mostly natural, so I am hearing a natural sound. The soundstage tends to be wide but not very deep. The layering is decent, as much as you could expect from this price point. We have a natural bass. The bass depth and extension will be limited by your speakers more than it will be limited by the A50 Plus. So with most speakers that I have, the bass can reach 40 Hz if the speaker driver allows them to. The A50 Plus won't do wonders for a speaker, and I expect that it will either be used with entry-level speakers or with older vintage speakers, because then it makes more sense to purchase an A50 Plus. In that situation, I think it's brilliant to use one of those A50 Pluses. It's small, convenient, it doesn't get hot during usage, and it doesn't draw a lot of power. Also, after 10 minutes of usage, it enters standby, so it doesn't draw power if you are not using it, while that doesn't happen with most audiophile grade amplifiers. For example, I have the KHSS 300 Plus running in my bag because I am going to the computer in a few minutes and I don't want to keep turning it on and off. With the A50 Plus, it will turn off automatically, it turns on automatically when it receives signal, so pretty convenient to use. As long as you are okay with using thinner speaker cables and as long as you are okay using its connectors, so it will be a bit of fiddling, it is one of the most convenient to use mini streaming amplifiers out there. The app is pretty mature at this point, and back when I reviewed it in writing, I wasn't very happy with the app. It was okay but not great. Now it's really good. I could get behind using it. It's a convenient app and the unit is convenient to use as well. I'll be adding purchase links for the A50 Plus if you want to order one for you or for your loved ones if they have a pair of speakers that they don't quite know how to power. I hope that you are enjoying Audiophile Heaven, and I hope that you'll consider subscribing to Audiophile Heaven, liking this video, and sharing with your friends if you find my input to be useful. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see each other really soon. Bye bye!